Hello class, here we are at chapter 4 and we're getting into the meat and potatoes of the stuff I like, and that's about working with supply chain management, is getting the relationship going. Now, supply integration, which is the way the textbook refers to it, is defined as professionally managing suppliers and developing close working relationships with different internal groups. It's not just outside, it's also with inside that we need to improve relationships. We need to become more closely integrated internally and externally, which would lead us now to be able to develop new capabilities, to be able to source the kinds of products we need, the technology, the design abilities, and so on of our suppliers. We also want to improve our overall competitive performance. Those sometimes boil down to better quality, better productivity, maybe delivery times, something that gives you a distinct advantage over your competitor. Now, how do we achieve this integration? Well, one of the things we're going to talk about today is about cross-functional teams. That'll be later on in the presentation. Another way, too, is this simple idea of working with information systems, an ERP system that's not just within our organization but also connects up with the suppliers, and even further down in the supply chain. We have integrated objectives and measures that are for performance that are measurable. In other words, we're measuring ourselves and we're asking our suppliers to be part of the measurement process. We are focused on the processes, okay? And we'd even like for our suppliers to go ahead and locate close to us. The Toyota plant in San Antonio is a good example. They have a supplier that's right on their facility that delivers seats that they push right into. Well, I say push is that they move right into the assembly line for the cars. So they have a supplier on location. You have buyer or supplier councils where the things that you learn at one place are applied at others. There's communication, there's discussion. And of course, to run all of this, you're going to have a steering committee. And this is a kind of coordination committee or a team that has key people in the buying organization and the supplying organization, and maybe even a variety of supplying organizations. Now, buyer-supplier collaboration, that's one of our goals here, or that enables us to do this wonderful new supply chain, is one or a limited number of suppliers for each item or family of items. We are not going to have a lot of suppliers. We're going to bring it down. I mean, just take a look at Dell. When it comes to memory chips, not memory chips, but processor chips, it's Intel. They work with Intel. Now, there are some companies that work, say, like Intel and maybe AMD, Advanced Micro Devices. And the rewards are shared between both organizations, buyer and supplier. It's a win-win thing. And you have joint efforts. Things are done together to improve supplier performance. It's not just on one side. And you also work jointly to resolve disputes or problems. It's about communication. In any relationship, there will be problems, disputes, but it doesn't mean it's the end of a relationship. In fact, it can help move the relationship to a higher plane when you're able to resolve it well to both sides, which involves lots of information, open information, trust. Well, we'll get that to in a moment, but trust may be also listed as credible commitment, is that we know that they're going to work, we're going to work, we're going to come together. And on both sides, you have a commitment to high quality, defect-free, manufacturable products that suppliers' process is capable of producing. Now, there are some pros and cons of closer relations. One is that the pro is that trust. Hey, we need to take advantage of each other. I mean, and it doesn't happen sometimes. And to share sensitive data, we need to be able to do this. And if we are able to do it, we have an earlier supplier involvement. The supplier brings in their their understanding of their technology and what it is that they're doing, something that we don't know. We can provide them an idea of what we want, but they know how to do it. And one of the neat things that comes out of a closer relationship is a longer term contract. The uncertainty goes down. If the supplier would like to invest in new equipment, they know that they can spread it out now over 5, 6, 7 years instead of 1 or 2. And if it was only spread out over 1 or 2 years, they may say it's not worth it. Let's not buy the new equipment. Now they can if they know that there's a long-term relationship. And the technology that we're developing, we know it's not just for today, it's also for tomorrow. And we share the risks. What are the problems or barriers that we can look at? One is confidentiality. Is that we're sharing information. We have to trust the people that they're going to hold on to this information and not pass it around. Sometimes your suppliers aren't interested. You don't represent enough business for me to do this, or it's not part of our culture to have this close relationship. We're not used to this kind of stuff. There may be legal barriers, and this usually doesn't happen between buyers and suppliers, but it could for two different companies that have similar technologies and similar markets, like going into a joint venture. And finally, I've already sort of mentioned it, but it's resistance to change. Some companies are not ready to work cooperatively. So how do you do this, closer supplier relation management? Well, start with your own organization. Figure out what your internal problems are. Who are the key decision makers that you need to talk to fix things? And resolve your internal conflicts so that you're able to now start focusing externally. And supply management should be the key point of contact. That's our buyer working with their marketing department or sales, and eventually it'll become broader. We're going to be working with different departments such as accounting, finance, and other areas. We know that it's going to be long-term, and we know that we're going to be measuring it and keeping an eye on key performance indicators to make sure that we are on track. If we're not achieving our goals, if we don't do what it is that we want, why be in this relationship? Now, one of the things for doing a relationship is to have cross-functional teams within both organizations. We're going to have various functional areas. Like I mentioned earlier, engineering, production, accounting, quality, they're all going to be involved working with the supplier. And one of the tasks is selecting the right supplier to start this out with. You're going to go with a high dollar item where you really need that relationship, that if something goes wrong, that it really affects production. Start it out as a pilot. Pick the most visible supplier. And you may want to work on product design with them, and that's a good way to approach it. Some of the general tasks are reducing purchased item costs. Yeah, it's all about incremental improvements that happen, and also improving quality bit by bit by bit. That plan, do, check, act, continuous improvement. That's where you would be applying this. One of the benefits is that you cut the time down to everything. Your cycle time is cut shorter. You also have more innovation. You have more ideas to share with. But also you're going to have to, share the rewards of innovation. And there's going to be joint ownership of decisions, joint ownership of products and other things. And you have to figure out how to deal with that. But that's what cooperation is about. There'll be more communication between functional areas within your own organization. You're going to find that to be able to work in a relationship with another company, you've got to fix things up within your own company, which leads to synergy. The idea, that 2 + 2 = 5 is that if you separate these items into separate departments, and the way we did things is that 2 + 2 is 4. Sometimes even 2 + 2 can end up being 3 if you have a dysfunctional relationship within your organization and with your supplier. But anyway, you identify problems and you resolve them much easier. And as part of this, and I've already mentioned, is that we need to build those internal relationships first.